What's up guys, this is Charles with Rocky Mountain ATV MC, and today I'll show you how to install an SDI motor mount plate on Polaris RZR 900 and 1000 models. On Polaris RZR 900 and 1000 models, it's important to keep the clutches in alignment. If they're not, you're going to have premature belt wear. So we do have a separate video on how to align these clutches. If you don't know how to get to this spot, definitely watch that video. And then once you're to this point with where you loosen all the mounts, we will actually add this motor mounting plate. And what this does, this keeps everything solid and in place once you have everything aligned. So we've got some knurling on the back, and this helps to grip the surface area, but we're also adding 2 more mounting bolts onto the engine side, and then we've got 3 set screws that are a little bit smaller and 1 big set screw. And again, all of this together keeps everything in place and aligned once we've done that. So we're working on a 2019 Polaris XP 1000, but as I mentioned earlier, this procedure will be similar for Polaris RZR 900 and 1000 models. To do this job, you'll need some basic hand tools, rags, and safety glasses. We also have our SDI motor mount, and depending on your model, you may or may not need a tap. If you do, it's a 10 by 1.25 millimeter tap. We've also got some grease and contact cleaner to go along with that, and throughout the process, we will be referring to our model-specific service manual. To start things off, we will need to have the clutches off, and then also we have our inner clutch cover removed, and then we have these alignment bars already installed onto our transmission shaft and the motor side. So what we're ready to do now, we'll go ahead, and we've got these 2 bolts right here that hold the transmission to the engine, and we'll loosen those and take both of these all the way out. The next thing we need to do is drill out both of these bolt holes right here. And as I mentioned earlier, some Polarises, these bolt holes will already have threads in them. Ours doesn't, so we're going to tap them out. So what we need to do first, we've got to grab our gloves. This keeps any chemicals off your hands. And it's always good to start out with a clean hole. So we'll just spray it out a little bit. Get any dirt out of there. We're also going to spray a little bit of air in here. Just get any debris out. So now we're ready to tap this out. And what we'll do, we'll take this 10 millimeter by 1.25 thread pitch tap. And I'm just going to use a little penetrating oil on these threads. And we've got an adapter to use a ratchet with it. So when we start this, just be really careful. You want to make sure you're going in nice and square. And apply a little bit of pressure. Once you get in there a couple threads, it's good to rock the tap back and forth. So you'll go back up a little bit, a little forward, and then back it up. And to help get the correct depth, you can mark the length of the bolt on your tap using a Sharpie and tap the hole to that depth. So after we back the tap out, what we'll do, we'll take some contact cleaner and we'll clean off all those metal shavings. With the tap clean, we'll lube it back up, and we'll do the same procedure on the second hole. Now that we have both our holes tapped out, what we need to do is we'll take our contact cleaner, and we need to spray all these metal particles out of the hole. And to keep it clean, I like to just cover everything up with a rag, and this will catch everything coming out. Now that we have those new holes tapped out, what we'll do, we'll take our motor mounting plate, and when we do this, when we install it, we need to make sure these set screws are backed off. So those 3 small ones at least need to be flush with this, or backed off even more, that's fine too. And then the big set screw, you don't want it sticking out any more than 1/4 inch. After that, what we'll do, we'll put a little bit of grease on the threads of each bolt, and we'll loosely install all 4 bolts. So, and keep in mind, we put the 2 longer bolts in the back and the 2 shorter bolts in the front. If you had to tap out the holes for the 2 front bolts, then SDI recommends using 50mm bolts for those 2 holes instead of the 40mm bolts supplied. And when you're putting these bolts on, don't forget to install the washer that came in the kit. Okay, now that we've got this mounting plate loosely installed, we've got 4 mounting bolts on the other side that we need to loosen up. And what this does, this will help us to align the clutch shafts. These 4 bolts are the bolts we'll be loosening up. So we'll do that with a 15mm socket. And keep in mind, we're just loosening everything up. We're not removing any bolts, just enough to where we can actually move the transmission around. With these mounting bolts loosened up, what we can do now, we'll install our alignment tool. And to do that, it's a good idea, we'll take just a little bit of grease and we'll put it on both of these shafts right here. And this will just help the tool slide on easy. So these probably won't go on very easy. So right here, our alignment is off pretty far, obviously, because we have everything loosened up. But to align it, what we'll do, we'll take a rag, we'll put it over this frame right here. Then we've got a pry bar, and we'll just use the pry bar on the transmission. And this will help us align everything, engine and transmission. So we'll slide the alignment tool almost to the end of this engine side shaft. And then once it's on as far as we want it, we'll take the second alignment bar and we'll slide this onto the shafts. And this one, we'll want it out just about as far as we can go. So now that we have these alignment bars on, what we'll do, we'll only tighten these 4 clamping bolts on these alignment bars, just on this engine side shaft. With the front bolts on these alignment bars tightened down, what we'll want to do, we'll take the transmission shaft and we actually want to rotate this inside the bars. And if it rotates freely, then you know everything's aligned. If it doesn't, then you'll want to try to readjust everything, might have to use your pry bar again, and you want to move it around until this rotates freely. So now that we've got that, we'll tighten these back bolts down too. With everything lined up, we can now torque all of our mounting bolts down. So what we'll do, these 2 longer bolts on the motor mount, we'll torque those first, and the front 2, we'll actually wait until we have these alignment bars taken back off. So these 2 bolts are a different spec than Polaris recommends. Polaris normally has you torque these to 64 foot-pounds. With our new plate, since we're using different hardware, they actually recommend 50 foot-pounds. So we'll tighten them up and then torque them down to 50 foot-pounds. Okay, as we mentioned earlier, we'll be referring to our model-specific service manual. Now, there is a torquing sequence to tighten all of these bolts. So what we'll do, we'll snug this bottom one down and then we'll tighten it to 5 foot-pounds. So the torque spec on everything else is actually 44 foot-pounds. So we'll start at this bottom here and we'll work our way around. And even this one we started at 5 foot-pounds, we'll be torquing that to 44. So we'll come back to the clutch side of the machine and we'll loosen these 4 clamping bolts on these alignment bars. Now that we've got those loosened up, what we want to do, we want to make sure everything is still in alignment. And how we do that, we'll take this transmission shaft and make sure it spins easily. If it does, then everything is still in alignment and we can remove these alignment bars. Another test to make sure these are in alignment is if this comes off easily, then we know everything's still aligned well. Now that the alignment bars are out of the way, we can tighten down these 2 front bolts on our mounting plate. So right now I'm just going to snug them down. And the spec on these front bolts is 44 foot-pounds. Now when you're tightening them down, everything might feel a little spongy, and that's partially because of the knurling on the back of this plate, and everything's just seating together. For these set screws, we're going to snug these down. They do give a spec on them. You can go up to 12 foot-pounds, but really you're just tightening them in till they're nice and snug. After that, we'll tighten this big set screw down. We'll just get that one snug as well. That's all there is to installing the SDI Motor Mount Plate. From this point, if you need help assembling the rest of your RZR, you can refer to our RZR clutch alignment video. And if you need this plate, this kit's available on our website along with pretty much anything you could want for your machine, including OEM and aftermarket parts. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel because we have a ton of other helpful videos on there, including the clutch alignment video we mentioned earlier. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.